Thank you for stopping by Ballistic BBQ. On this video, I have teamed up with Kingsford to bring you guys brown sugar Applewood barbecued spare ribs that I prepared at the official viewing party for the CMT Music Awards in Nashville. Let's get going. All right, before we get cooking here, I want to just talk to you guys about something. Obviously, this is a sponsored video. I just want to let you guys know that I do have a standard when it comes to sponsored videos. I'm not going to stand in front of you guys and tell you that I like something unless I truly do. I don't care what brand it is. I've had this sauce that I'm going to be using in this video. It's one of the new sauces from Kingsford. Tastes really, really good. But as many of you know, there's a lot more to quality than just simply taste alone. I looked at the labels and I want to share this with you, then make your decision. Don't laugh at my store-bought cheaters here. I'm getting older and reading has become a problem here as far as seeing the words, being able to read. Anyway, the ingredients of this is the sauce I will be using today. It's the brown sugar Applewood. They also have original smoked hickory and honey jalapeno mesquite. So, ingredients: tomato puree, brown sugar, so it's not high fructose corn syrup, vinegar, apple juice concentrate, salt, natural Applewood smoke flavor, spices, onion, garlic, natural flavor, turmeric, paprika, and dried extracts. So I'll let you guys make your decisions, but this looks like a pretty wholesome sauce. And I can tell you that last night I went to the grocery store and looked at a bunch of labels of some very popular sauces that a lot of us use. And not all of those guys can claim the same type of ingredients that this has right here. Anyway, let's get to cooking. The first thing we're going to do is make a rub. All right, so last week, Kingsford flew me out to Nashville and I had the honor of doing a rib demonstration for the Kingsford Country Cookout at the official viewing party for the CMT Music Awards. And I'll tell you what, hopefully it wasn't a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but man, I had a blast. My wife went up with me, and I love Nashville. First time I ever been to Nashville, and I fell in love with Nashville. It's a great place. The rib recipe is a very, very basic recipe, and the whole point of this recipe is to tell people, hey, Father's Day is coming. This isn't rocket science. We're going to show you how to make some great ribs on a very simple cooker, and that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to pretty much recreate that recipe. However, I will be adding a little twist inspired by Nashville. So let's get going with this rub. I have here 1/4 cup dark brown sugar, 2 tablespoons garlic salt, and these salts that I'm adding are the salt element. I'm not adding just straight salt. 4 teaspoons chili powder, 1 teaspoon black pepper, 1/2 teaspoon celery salt, 1/4 teaspoon cayenne pepper, 1/4 teaspoon cinnamon. So we'll just get this mixed up really well. All right, there we go. What I'm going to do now is put this in an old rub shaker container that's empty right now, and we will be using this to season the ribs. Set this off to the side. All right, the next thing we're going to make is what the recipe calls a liquid seasoning, but I honestly think a more appropriate name would be a braising liquid. We're going to add 1/2 cup of unfiltered raw apple cider vinegar, and I absolutely love this raw vinegar. Now we're adding 1 cup of dark brown sugar. Let's get that mixed, and it will dissolve by the time we use this. We're going to use this during the wrap, when we wrap these ribs. So it's already starting to break down here. All right, I'll set this off to the side. Now let's prep those ribs. All right, I have here 2 racks of spare ribs. These have been trimmed St. Louis style. We're going to do a little extra trimming, however. Now right here, the bone was cut in half by an overzealous processing guy, so I'm going to remove that. It's sharp and it's not worth hurting somebody. Now the flap's already been removed. We are going to remove that membrane. Now there are actually 2 membranes here. We want to remove the top membrane. If you remove the thinner membrane on the bottom, those are kind of what hold the bones in place, and you run the risk of losing bones as it cooks. Now, a very common way of removing the membrane is to stick a blunt knife, screwdriver, whatever, underneath that membrane and prying it up, which I did that for years and years and years. I've recently adopted a new method. The reason is there's less of a chance of accidentally grabbing that second membrane. I'm just going to take that knife blade and kind of scrape the top here, the end of this rib rack, until I loosen that membrane up just enough to grab it, and it's already coming. The nice thing is you don't really have to worry about getting overzealous and getting too deep underneath onto that second membrane there. Little piece of napkin here, just grab that membrane and pull it up. There, easy stuff. Okay, now there's a lot of heavy thick fat here on the bottom. This rack is going to be cooking bone down initially. So I'm going to remove or just thin out this fat here. It's just going to drip off. It's not going to render into the meat because it's dripping down into the grate. And all it's really going to do is remove seasoning that I want to taste. So let's get rid of some of that. All right, so the fat has been thinned down. The only thing I really need to do on this rack is just these little dangly pieces of meat. I want to remove those because they're just going to get burned. They're going to cook way sooner than the rest of this rib and just burn. So it's kind of a waste even having them there. Just want a nice uniform rack of ribs like this little corner piece here. Cut that off, kind of round the edges here. And that looks pretty darn good. Now I wanted to show you this other rack. I've already removed the membrane on this, but this is just something you couldn't see through the cryovac, but you need to be aware of it. Let me see, get a good view here. So here's how the ribs were in the cryovac, but right here, peel it open, and you can see again how that saw cut the top of this bone off, and right in this little nice bite-sized piece of meat is the bone fragment, the very sharp bone fragment. I'm not going to cut this rib off. It's not going to be real pretty as far as, but it's not a competition. We're cooking these to eat. But I don't want myself or again one of my guests to get this sharp bone in their mouth. So trim that. Next thing that I would like to do is I just like to feel the edges of these bones and just make sure that you don't have any of those loose fragments. And if they're there, obviously remove it. These guys are ready to season, so let's put that rub to work. All right, so I've placed that very basic rub we made in an empty rub shaker, rub container, and it allows you to actually get a little better mix in it just by shaking it up. Good stuff. Anyway, I like to add a little bit of a binder. You could add mustard. I'm using a little olive oil, going very light. I just want to use this, again, to give something for this rub to adhere to. Nice thing about removing that membrane is we're going to get nice flavor penetrating through the bottom of the racks as well as the top, and the smoke's going to penetrate through the bottom as well. Smoke and this rub will not penetrate through that membrane. And as it cooks, that membrane is going to turn really chewy. So some people like it. Just personally, I don't. Get this. All right, there we go. Looks good. That rub really smells good. And I'll tell you what, this is a perfect pork spare rib rub. The meat on this is really thin, and the amount of salt that the celery salt has and that garlic salt is just perfect for this. You don't want to over salt this thin pork meat. So what we're going to do now is just allow these ribs to sweat through this rub, get a little bit more penetration into the meat, In the meantime, I'll meet you out in the backyard. We'll get the kettle grill fired up. Again, we're cooking real basic stuff here. I'm going to show you how to use that kettle grill as a barbecue. Meet you outside. All right, for this cook, I'm using the basic kettle cooker. And again, this is as simple and as affordable as any cooker out there. But I don't think a lot of people appreciate the versatility of a kettle. I think most people use them to cook hamburgers and hot dogs, but you can cook anything on it, including some really good barbecue. As far as the fuel, we are using Kingsford's new long burning charcoal. The stuff burns 25% longer than the original blue bag. And one thing that's cool, again, in talking to the Kingsford people, they can now say that all of their charcoal products are 100% natural, which I think is very, very important. Let me show you the setup here. So I've pre-arranged charcoal right here and right here up against the wall of the inside of the kettle. You can see I left an opening there. A lot of people do what they call a snake burn, and they'll set up charcoal around the perimeter here, you know, halfway around, and then light one end. I've found that you get a better, more even burn if you light it in the middle. You think about it, I'm going to have the ribs off on the indirect side, the heat starting all the way across the other side of the grill, and it's going to burn in two directions. So instead of it burning in one direction, close to one rack of ribs, it's going to burn in the middle and burn towards both racks, or both edges of the rib. So I have that open space for a reason. I have here a small chimney of charcoal, and it's lit. It's not fully lit, but that's okay because I didn't use any lighter fluid, so we don't have to worry about that lighter fluid flavor, the unburned lighter fluid flavor. So you can see where we're going here. It's going to burn evenly around. As far as that bottom damper, I have it maybe a 1/4 of an inch open, maybe a little less than a 1/4 of an inch. Now this is when we're going to add our wood chips for smoke, or wood chunks, whatever you want to burn. Remember, wood is a seasoning. You don't need a whole lot. If you're not seeing a whole lot of smoke coming out of the lid or the stack, that's actually a good thing. And I just want to strategically place this around to where we'll get smoke throughout this entire cook. Even when I don't need it, when the ribs are wrapped, but that's fine. And in keeping in theme, this wood here is from whiskey barrels. So I'll tell you the secret. What I'm going to do is add some Tennessee whiskey to the barbecue sauce and reduce it down. I'll explain that later. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get those grates in. Now before we get the ribs on the grate here, we want to get that temperature dialed in, and I'm shooting for 250 degrees. I'm going to place the lid damper, the vent on the lid, away from the heat source, so it will be over the food. That way we'll get that convection and the smoke will come right over the food and out the lid here. And I'm going to start off opening it, again, probably a little less than a 1/4 of an inch. And I'm just going to keep an eye on the temperature here on the lid, and I'll just adjust it as I need to until I hit that 250. Once I hit 250, I'm going to let it sit for a good 10 minutes or so, make sure that we have a nice stable heat. See you in a bit. All right, we are locked in at 250 degrees Fahrenheit now. Very light smoke coming out, but I can smell it. It smells wonderful. Let's get those ribs on. Again, we're going indirect heat, so I'm putting the ribs as far away from that heat source as I can get them. Put this right up against the wall here. You can see how that rub has sweat through. I want to make sure that I leave a little bit of a gap between the two racks here, so the smoke and the heat can rise between the bones, between the two racks. All right, let's get that lid on. We don't want to dilly-dally when it comes to putting the lid on, guys. Get the meat on as quickly as possible, get the lid on as quickly as possible. Time to visit is after the lid is in place. We are going to wrap these ribs in foil with that liquid that we made. After they develop a nice mahogany color, the bark starts to develop. I can tell you that that will happen probably 2 to 2.5 hours. So, I mean, I can't say it'll happen in 2 hours and 30 minutes. It'll happen between that time span. I can guarantee you that, as long as we're maintaining this good 250 degree temperature. On that note, You know, this is a very basic cooker. It's not a ceramic. We can go low and slow. We are going low and slow, and you can get some fantastic barbecue out of one of these basic cookers. But again, it's not like a ceramic. It's not designed to retain heat as efficiently as one of the higher end cookers. And that's one of the benefits with this longer burning charcoal is you just don't have to mess with it as often. You don't have to add charcoal, you know, every hour or whatever. It burns slow, so it's pretty impressive stuff. Anyway, once I get that color, I'll show you what it looks like, and we'll go through that wrapping process. See you in a bit. All right, we are at about 2 hours, 20 minutes. I just took a peek, and we have that color I'm looking for. Check it out. See, it's that just beautiful, beautiful mahogany color. So we're going to go ahead and wrap these now. I'm going to lay these face down on the foil. While I'm wrapping this rib, I'll go ahead and put the lid on so I don't get a big heat spike in the cooker. So I have that mixture right here, that raw unfiltered apple cider with the brown sugar. Lay a little bit down here on the what's going to be the meat side down. Kind of make a boat here. Pour some of this on that bone side. For this layer here, I'm just going to do a simple wrap. Fold it, fold it, fold it. Now we want this to be as tight as possible because we're going for like a braising action more than steaming or boiling. We want this to braise. I'll take that second sheet of foil here. Just to seal it off even more. And again, we want the least amount of air in here as possible. We're going for that braising action. And just simple fold on the cooker. So this cooker's been rocking a steady 250. I'm really happy with that. I'm going to cook these until tender now. Should take about an hour, and basically what I'm going for is that meat probe going in between the bones, coming out with very little resistance. I'm looking for a pullback on the bone. I don't want these falling off the bone. Some people like that. If you do, that's the way you want to cook them. I like a little bit of tug. So see you in a bit. All right, so these ribs have been wrapped now a little over an hour. I started checking for tenderness at about an hour, and we're, I don't know, about an hour 15 in now. They're ready to unwrap and then glaze. But I think you can see here, bones are pulling away. The meat between the bones is really tender, very nice. I wouldn't want to let them go any longer than this because then we're going to have that fall off the bone thing. If that's what you like, just let them go longer. So what I'm going to do now is pull these. I'll take them off into the house, drain off the juices, bring them back out, we'll glaze them. I'll show you that process. See you in a bit. All right, so I unwrapped the ribs in the house, brought them out. We're ready to glaze these bad boys. Now I did suffer one minor casualty right here. A bone separated, so this rack is pretty much broken in half, but very, very, very tender. I mean, it's going to be good. And again, these are for eating, not for framing and hanging on a wall. So this is that brown sugar Applewood BBQ sauce by Kingsford. And what I did, and this was sort of inspired by going to Nashville and just experiencing that whole thing, was I reduced about 3/4 of a cup of Tennessee Whisky in that sauce. So in one bottle, just reduced it down. And you can see this rack of ribs. This is that one that had that funky cut across the bone there. So there's a big section of meat that was detached anyways. I'm sure that contributed a lot to the separation. Anyway, 3/4 of a cup of the Tennessee Whiskey to one bottle of that barbecue sauce, and just got it to boiling and reduced the heat, let it reduce, and it's good. There's sort of the sauce, it reminds me of like an apple butter, like there's an apple butter kind of a quality to it. This is just going to be a few minutes. I want that sauce to kind of tighten up, kind of caramelize on us. Then we'll pull them off and the taste test begins. It's going to be good. Oh, and I wanted to mention this charcoal. So you saw how much charcoal I had on there. About less than 3/4 of it is burned, and there's still a nice pile of it that hasn't even ignited yet. So there's still a few more hours of burn left in that batch of charcoal that you saw, and I have not touched it. I have not added one briquette. Anyway, I'll see you guys in a bit. Another 5-10 minutes in, and check it out. These are gorgeous, and it smells really good. I'm going to go ahead and pull these off the cooker, take them in the house, let them rest just a little bit, let them cool down a tad. I'll slice them up and we'll have a taste test. Meet you inside the house. All right, so I've rested the ribs. I cannot wait to try these out. They just look amazing. Let's see, let's give these a cut. Nice smoke ring there. It smells amazing. Perfect bite. Right there. Wow. So, this brown sugar Applewood barbecue sauce. First of all, it's good stuff. I mean, really, really good stuff. It's kind of cool. I mean, Kingsford's been, you know, making charcoal in that industry for like almost 100 years. And they're just now figuring out that, hey, let's make some sauce. And they're doing it right. I mean, again, those ingredients are perfect. But adding that whiskey just kicks it up a couple notches. Again, I just added the whiskey in. I poured a bottle into the pot right there on my stove. Added about 3/4 cup of a nice Tennessee whiskey and just simmered it until it reduced back down to the level it was before I added that whiskey. And you can smell it. But all that alcohol is out of it, so there's not that burn. It's just very, very pleasant. It adds another kind of an oaky note, I guess. Good stuff, wow. So my wife and kids are waiting in the wings for dinner. Cut this short. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. I appreciate it. Kingsford, thank you for the opportunity. Totally cool. I dig it. Thanks again. I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.